Let's talk about how to underglaze your pieces. For people who might be newer to ceramics, maybe you've never used underglaze before, underglaze is something that not all studios use, and it is different than regular glaze that you often dip into in a bucket. We have sheets at the studio about how to underglaze. On the back side of these sheets, it also just has clay basics techniques. So these are really, really good to grab just to look over whether you need a refresher or maybe there are just things in here that you don't know about. These are going to be very, very helpful anytime you are making anything in the studio. We also have 2 different sheets on how to throw, so you can grab either one of those. My sheet, is kind of confusing if you haven't taken my class. Maddie's sheet is definitely a little bit more straightforward, but it does have some terms that you might not know, like karate chop and 7 o'clock, so we can also give you a rundown on that if you need. Anyways, back to underglazing. Underglaze is essentially a clay-based paint, and so what that means is it is different from a regular glaze in the sense that it will not melt or move at all when it goes into the kiln because it is clay-based. Regular glaze essentially turns into kind of like a liquid glass in the kiln, and that's what gives us the shininess on the outside. It will melt and move and blend together and fully kind of coat your piece. There are exceptions to that. There are satin glazes, there are matte glazes, but in general, that's kind of what we've got going on. With that being said, underglaze is cool because it can give you really clear, crisp designs without any of it melting, moving, blending together. So what you paint is going to be what you get. We have a ton of different colors of underglaze, and they each have a test tile associated with them. This is the color that your piece is going to be once it's fired. All of your pieces, you're probably going to want to coat with a clear coat once they are bisque fired. So for the most part, you'll want to look at the top side of these underglaze tiles with the clear side because your pieces will need to be clear coated if you want them to be food safe, microwave safe, dishwasher safe, etc. On these test tiles in vertical stripes going left to right, we've got 1, 2, and then 3 coats of underglaze. It's kind of hard to see on here, but it's easier to see in person. I recommend doing 2 coats of every single color so that you get a nice opaque coverage. If you only do 1 coat, it will often be quite thin or quite streaky. If you want to layer and you want to go for kind of a more transparent coat, you're more than welcome to, but also just know that it's not going to be a fully solid cover if you only do 1 coat. Let's say you are underglazing on something that is bone dry. This is typically the stage that I like to underglaze things on. If you underglaze things when they're leather hard, you have a different set of techniques available to you. So if you want to underglaze on something that is leather hard, this is the time that you're going to be able to carve into your piece, so you could do a design with that. There's a technique called sgraffito, which is super cool, which is where you underglaze your piece and then you carve in a design. And so the background is going to be, let's say red, and then wherever you carve is just going to be the color of the clay, which is typically going to be like an off-white color. So that's something cool that you can do at leather hard. One of the reasons that I like to underglaze at bone dry instead is because you can draw on your piece with a pencil. Also, anything you draw will fully burn off in the kiln. So let's say I wanted to draw on this bowl. Maybe I wanted to draw a star on it. Something kind of like that. And then let's say I was like, actually, just kidding, I hate that star. This will fully burn off in the kiln regardless of anything else that I do. So if I were to just fire this and be like, I'd rather my piece be blank, it will fully burn off in the kiln and this will be just a completely blank piece. So that's one of the things that I like the best is that you can really map out and plan your designs with pencil first if you're doing it on bone dry or if you're doing it on bisque. When you are using a pencil, if you try to use it on leather hard, it will carve into the clay and you will get an indent, and you also won't get that pencil line. The reason that I like to underglaze better on bone dry instead of bisque is because during the bisque fire, it kind of locks in and solidifies that underglaze with the clay when it's fired, meaning that it's not going to smear or anything when you glaze it. Some people have really good luck with underglazing on bisque. I've just had a couple times where I've underglazed something and then had my underglaze run a little bit because of the clear glaze, and it was like upsetting enough to me that I just always do it on this stage. Also, when you underglaze on bone dry, if you make a mistake, it's much easier to correct than it is on bisque. You can take a tool that is capable of scraping. We have a bucket of tools that look kind of like dentist tools. Those are the ones I like to use. And you can just scrape away whatever you don't like, and it's really easy to get off and then try again. Most colors will cover over other colors if you use enough coats. So let's say you wanted to do a pink and red checkerboard. If you want to save yourself a little bit of time, you could paint your entire piece pink, then do the red squares on top, and then you'll have your pink and red checkerboard. With that being said, it is a good idea to do the darker colors on top of the lighter colors. So if you're doing something that's like black and yellow, do the yellow first and then do the black on top. You can also go the other way, but it might not show up quite as well. Here's an example of a mug that somebody made where they did white and yellow over green. And personally, I think this turned out so cute. But just know that like it is a little bit more transparent versus something kind of like this, which has, a more solid covering. This is also so cute. A good thing to note about that is that your pencil lines will be covered by the first coat of underglaze. So you'll want your order of operations for that to be, let's say you're doing the pink and red checkerboard, you want to paint your piece pink, 2 coats, then draw your pencil lines, then do the red squares. If you draw your pencil lines first and then paint it pink, they're gonna get fully covered and you're not gonna be able to see them again anymore, and then you're just gonna have to do it again, which is annoying. If you want to use colors as is and just have them turn out the way they look on the test tile, you can just dip right into the container. Each color has little containers associated with it. If you want to mix your own colors, you are more than welcome to, and you can just use a paint palette. Just keep in mind they will be a lot darker and richer and more vibrant once they are fired. So if you aren't quite sure what the color will be once it's fired, just ask and we can give you kind of a better idea of what we think it will turn out looking like. If you're using Christy Lombard, which is the main clay that we have in here, this is the color that it will be if you leave any area unglazed or without underglaze. It will be kind of this off-white color. If you like that, you can incorporate that into your design, kind of like this person did. I love this. Everybody makes the coolest stuff in here. And if you don't like it, you can just make sure you cover it up. With underglaze, you are able to paint the bottom. You could put your name, you could put a design, you can paint the entire thing. It doesn't matter, it won't stick to the kiln shelf. When we talk about actual glaze, you cannot put that on the bottom of your piece. It will fuse to the kiln shelf and it will ruin both your piece and the expensive kiln shelves. So just keep that in mind. Underglaze, fair game, you can paint everything, low stakes, don't worry about it. I think that's most of what I got on underglazing. If you have any other specific questions, let us know. There's also tons of different underglaze techniques just generally, so that's something that might be worth looking up if you are interested in. There's tons of videos on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, that you can check out that might have like cool techniques or ideas for you.